Hey there.
Hey, Sasha. Perfect timing for now, next, later. I'm excited for today's episode. How are you?
Well, how are you?
Great, thanks. I always let everyone come in from our waiting room. We're almost there. I see everybody filtering in. Yeah, I'm good. I was gonna start with this like weird anecdote from when I was in high school. I had this quirky teacher, and every March 4th tomorrow, he would
Mhm.
always say, March 4th, and he would yell, the only day that is also a command. And it always stuck with me. And I have a group text chain with three of my best friends from high school. We always joke about March 4th, obviously the verb and the month.
Yeah.
And then like 2 years ago, somebody was like, you always say this on Instagram, and I don't want to burst your bubble, but like March 1st is also kind of a command. And it sort of ruined it for me,
Um,
because I spent like 20 years just celebrating this random day in March for no reason. But anyway,
yeah,
March 4th tomorrow is actually a command.
there you go.
But today's March 3rd.
May the force be with you. That's the other one,
Yeah,
right?
that's always a big one. I know that's a fun one. That's a fun one too because it's the day before Cinco de Mayo, and so you get a back-to-back special
Yeah,
day.
right. May the force be with you in your drinking activities the following day.
My view is you got to celebrate these weird things, otherwise, like, what's the point? So
Yeah, why?
I'm celebrating. So today, March 3rd, now, next, later, it's me and you. And before we get started, I wanted to invite everyone in attendance to be thinking about questions to submit in the chat. I had originally thought it might be fun to do an open Q&A session. I didn't necessarily get that invitation out fast enough to have people prepare questions and be thinking about it. But if you have one, especially while we're chatting, please throw it in the chat, and Sasha and I will be answering questions throughout this half an hour or 26 minutes. And then the topic I wanted to start with today that I've been thinking a lot about is consumer data. And it comes up a lot on this program because how you get adoption of digital tools and how you waterfall day one certainty or some of the other programs around income and assets like Freddie Mac's AIM program, like how you do that makes a really big difference for both cost and conversion. And it's a
Mhm.
constant theme. Almost everybody um, comes in and talks to us about one, adoption, and then two, cost. Um, Sometimes it's the other way around, cost first, then adoption. But my point is, there seems to be more changing with consumer data than a lot of our partners, customers, clients, lenders are necessarily talking about, at least in my opinion. So now, next, later, part of our mission here is to bring some of those issues to the forefront and talk through where are we right now, what do we think happens this year, and kind of where does this go. So I'll kick it off with the now part around consumer data. I would say, and I'm going to make a statement and then ask you to agree or disagree, basically, is consumers are more comfortable connecting accounts with whatever portal, screen, or interstitial command that you put in front of them than ever before. And so it's intuitive now to connect this account or log in with Google or sign in with Plaid or all of these versions. I would say kind of tie back in some ways to like payments. Payments was a very forward looking fintech category and started putting all these options when you check out online, right? It was first, it was put in your credit card, PayPal, then it was Venmo, then it was Apple Pay, and now you've got about seven different options.
Right.
I don't know if you use Shopify with any of your online purchases, but if you do Shopify and you put your email address in, it fills out the rest and it's already shipping it to you by the time you even realize what happened in many cases. And so payments led 10 years ago. Mortgage and credit is slowly following. So I get asked a lot, what percentage of conversion should you get? We had that conversation on here recently. Um, how are you seeing people deal with consumer data engagement? And let's just start with those verification categories, right? ID, credit, income, assets. What are you seeing as some of the trends right now?
I think So I agree with everything you said, and I think it's good to hold in perspective two things. One, there there are consumers that use their data day in and day out, to your point, on all these other applications for these other use cases. And then separately, mortgage, for whatever reason, likes to be like not the leader of the pack,
Right.
right? So they're like the slow follower, right? That's trying to like get the Flintstone car to go. Um, but with that, I do still feel like, and maybe one day will change as generations continue to come into purchasing power. But for now, we are still at a point where we're a blended society with blended access to technology, blended understanding of technology and use of technology, and we have to meet consumers where they're at. And so, and
Hmm.
lenders with it, for that matter too, right? So I feel like you have to have all options available.
Hmm.
And I think there are, Zactus being one of the companies, but there are many other companies out there that are playing with the ideas of what type of scenarios can lenders leverage to see, are consumers willing to be, more advanced in their data, whether it's, logging in to verify their income or employment. We actually have a new product, and wouldn't be surprised if others are considering doing the same, where the lender can send a link for the consumer to pay for their credit report upfront. Sometimes that's desirable, other times it's not, and that's okay. So I think we're in
Hmm.
that phase of like, kind of throwing spaghetti on the wall, trying different things on for size, meeting people where they're at, and seeing like what takes, what doesn't. Where do we run into the general adoption hurdles that we run into with everything and anything new that we do? And for whatever reason, I swear this industry struggles with adoption more than any I've ever seen. But I think it's important for us to at least try, because I do think that more and more consumers are used to that digital experience and they do want that optionality. And in some cases, they'll feel more comfortable. In other cases, it's just going to take longer to get there. And that's okay.
Yeah, that's a great. So I'm going to take the bait on throwing spaghetti against the wall.
Yeah.
Is it true, do you think, or am I sort of biased in my own technology usage, that I get a sense consumers are actually more tech savvy and comfortable than sometimes our own technology or systems internally will allow, right? So why wouldn't we, or who is, maybe is the better question, are you seeing anyone lean in and actually say to consumers, here's exactly what's going on. We need this for this. We need this for this. We need this for this. And here's what it costs. Because I
Yeah.
feel like I'm not seeing it, but maybe I'm wrong. Is there is there a clear consumer consent funnel out there where you've seen somebody, you don't have to name them necessarily unless you want to, but I'm saying like best in class, like why aren't we just seeing somebody go to consumers and be like, here's all the links, here are the
Yeah.
steps, here's what each does, if you click here, we are pulling credit. If you click here, we're pulling credit and you're paying for it. If we click here, this will happen. Like, and just give everybody the roadmap that we all seem to be hiding behind some curtain.
Yeah, and I think if I were to summarize what you're saying, it's almost like, why isn't the default that when we engage with a consumer that it is tech? And then if you want to opt out rather than opt in, you have the ability to opt out. And I think this is going to be a little bit out of my range of knowledge. So maybe some lenders on the call can fill in the blanks. But if I recall correctly, because especially IMB, state regulated versus federal, I think there are still certain regulations that make that challenging to do across the board. And so it's not like a carte blanche, hey, we can just do this. And then I saw Kimberly put a note in the chat, right? 50-50 with clients, wanting to lean into it versus not lean into it. That doesn't help either, because, you either way, opt in or opt out, somebody has to check a box, and that's still annoying. And so I think until we see more trending towards, kind of pushing people to do the cool thing, right? Like sign your documents online, go log in and give permission to share your data one way or the other. It's just going to take time. And then again, those regulatory forces that I'm not an expert in, I know that they exist. And again, I know it gets more convoluted when you have to get down to the state level. I mean, you and I both saw it at the closing companies we worked with, right? Even county registers couldn't fully accept RON. And so when they can't, then the lender can all day long want their consumer to have a good experience. But if a county can't accept something, well, then we're no better off. So I think as an industry, we probably just need to continue to look at across the ecosystem what hurdles are causing us to not be able to really push consumers forward, where it makes sense for them. And it's interesting. In closing, I don't know if you remember this from your days in the closing tech side, but people would always have these misnomers that like the 99-year-old is the one that doesn't want it. And ironically, it was very often that the 99-year-old did, because they're like, I don't want to leave my house. I'm actually more comfortable staying in my house. And then you have somebody like my dad who passed away last year at 72 years old and still had a flip phone and was like, I don't want to touch technology, go away from me. And then you've got, the 25-year-old that just for whatever reason wants to revolt against being a millennial. So like age doesn't matter in this scenario, right? It's just a matter of your personal appetite. So I think you're dealing with both. You're dealing with the personal appetite for it, and then you're dealing with we maybe not fully as an ecosystem can give opportunities to accept digital in the ways that we want to right now.
Yeah, when I was at Stavvy, I had a bad habit of really feeling like, and this is a cost question. I led the show kind of talking about cost and adoption, but at Stavvy, I was so bullish on adoption that I thought it should be Stavvy's problem and not the lender or the customer's problem when that closing kind of like defaults out because of the land records office. So there were other reasons a transaction might default out of digital. Some of them are what you're mentioning because the person asserts, hey, I really need to be in paper, I really need to be in person or whatever. That's different to me because that's a customer service issue. When it's the land records, my thought was we make that our problem. Like we want to be valuable. All these tech partners, all these vendors come to me is like, how do I get into Fannie and Freddie? How do I win a big lender contract? How do I? And my view was make everything your problem, right? Like if you're the vendor, you're the partner. We want things to close digitally because Stavvy wants to be the, system that wins that market share battle. It should be our problem. We'll figure it out. You keep closing the way we want you to. You keep closing digitally. We'll go and make it work. And that might cost us more in the short run, but in the long run, we would capture that. So I'm kind of thinking of the same thing here. So I could be wrong. I was wrong then, just around timing. I don't think I was wrong big picture, but I was wrong around the timing of that, the cost of that. But pulling it forward, and maybe I wasn't, but we'll say I was. I want to pull that forward to
Never
consumer
a bad thing
data.
as a male to admit that you're wrong, even if you weren't.
That's right.
It's good.
I was wrong. Bring it up funnel to consumer data, right? Which is to say this. I think that there's this comment from Kimberly that you referenced, like if I'm not for it, I'm really not for it. And if I'm comfortable with it, I'm probably pretty to fairly comfortable with it. And I think that kind of makes sense. But what I can't figure out is that only because the linear way we do handoffs today? And what I mean by this is I am going to be a little skeptical of putting my bank account information somewhere when it's some random link that my real estate agent was like, just trust this person.
Right.
Or it's some random phone call from a dialer because I did a calculator online and the person on the phone's like, did you get my text? Just click on it.
Yeah.
This is what goes back to the fundamental question is our digital adoption a function of mortgage being buried and untrustworthy in the overall process? And when I say untrustworthy, loan officers like to jump on me and be like, well, I'm not untrustworthy. I'm like, no, you're not. But the way in which people find you typically is only family member referral, essentially, are trusted. Everything else is you're coming from a real estate agent who I also kind of trust, but I don't implicitly trust. And then I'm being handed to you, who I don't know at all. And now I kind of trust you because this other person I kind of trust told me to. So it has nothing to do with you, the individual MLO. It has to do with the way in which we present mortgage, which is we present it fast, we present it hard, and we tell you you're not allowed to not trust us. And it's like, what kind of experience is that? No wonder I'm skeptical 50-50 of the time, because I'm getting a random phone call or text, or I'm getting some introduction from my real estate agent who I also am still getting to know. And so refi purchase, it seems to me like we do a poor job of trusting ourselves to move up funnel and say to consumers, this is the way you understand credit. Click here. And
Right.
we'll show you each piece along the way, and actually build an environment where people feel comfortable. I don't know. I know this is like one of those really tough things to talk about because it has a lot of specifics to your tech stack and to your comp plans for your sales folks and things like that. But fundamentally, I think you've got to move out here and you've got to talk to consumers in a way that says, hey, look, I get where you're at. I get what you're doing. Here are what our links mean, or here's what we do for you in new and different ways that I'm not seeing as much as I thought I would in 2025.
Yeah, and I think there are some leading the pack in what I'll call a more consultative approach, right? Which is let me sit down with you and let's decide is now the right time to buy, to refi, whatever it might be, and becoming more of that financial advisor, becoming more of a trusted advisor where they can have a holistic conversation around making a huge purchase decision. I saw um, David, sorry, put in the note, that I think it was Kawada. Sorry, I can't keep up with the chat. You guys are
David
killing me.
Wells.
I love it.
David Wells. It's no, it's all good. Oh, Kawada. Yeah,
Around,
no
like not everyone really wants a mortgage. It's just a necessary evil. And it's like, okay,
evil.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yes and no. I understand that point of view, right? But if that's the case, then sitting down and having a consultative conversation on how it fits into your wealth building American dream plan at a bigger level opens the opportunity to talk more about other things, including what do you say yes to from a technology standpoint? How digital of an experience do you want to have? What questions do you have that I can help you, feel more safe about, hey, I'm going to be sending you, if it is digital, a bunch of emails or links, or, you're going to be in my system interacting with me, and this is what it's going to look like, feel like. And, I think that there are some leading the pack, but it's definitely, again, one of those, there's some slow following in that department. And it's a
Yeah.
new muscle. A lot of them aren't used to it, and a lot of them don't want to do that. And I think there are definitely some on the tail end of their career that are like, I'm going to keep doing it the way I've always been doing it until I peace out into the sunset. And that's that. And you're just like, okay, well then we need
Yeah.
some blood in the water.
And I, as somebody who's competitive and wants to see what happens, I'm excited when I hear somebody on stage. There was actually a speaker on stage at the Housing Wire Economics Summit where he said, I don't advise that you send out digital links in your email because if you're a mortgage loan officer, that just admits that more Rocket is right, or it seeds ground to Rocket. You should be getting people on the phone and et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, yeah, keep telling people that, please,
Right.
because the rest of us competing in a digital world will have an advantage, in my opinion, which is to say, it's not about the link. It's not about the digital tools that make you valuable or don't make you valuable as a loan officer. And if you think the only thing keeping you valuable as a loan officer is walking people through a 1003 on the phone, I got news for you. The other side of that call does not feel that way. And so
Yeah.
it is about transparency in this sort of next era. So seeing that we are at 20 minutes in already, and I hate when this happens. We always go so fast, Sasha. Let's move to what's next. And I'll use transparency as the bridge to
Yeah.
what's next. There's all these questions about consumer consent and lead gen. We've seen the CFPB before it was dismantled, talking about the rules around how we should interact with lead gen and consumers. We've seen a lot of states pick up trigger lead bills as a result of the federal bill not making it through. You're starting to see those bills like kind of filter out to the states, which is to be expected, I suppose. But here's the thing: I still don't understand. I still don't understand what we're so afraid of. In other words, I consent to shit all the time, because I perceive it to be valuable to me, right? So whether it's Apple, Google, I'm always consenting to things because I want
Yeah.
something. And that could
Yeah.
be transactional, but it also could be relationship. Like, I want this device to work on my TV. I want to be able to AirPlay. I want to be able to have interconnectivity between my apps and my financial life, my shopping life, my car. I want it all to work together. So I consent to stuff. And I think we don't do a good job of having everything work together. So for me, like one-to-one consumer consent in the lead gen space, getting more personal up funnel with consumers in the lead gen space is exactly what needs to happen. So I'm just going to tell you what I've been hearing as what's next. Um, and A lot of people talk about it as like move left. And what they mean is like they think of the transaction still as linear,
Mhm.
and they want to move the activities to the left. I don't love it because I think even the linear transaction is over, and we shouldn't really think about it that way. Um, but the idea is I want to go up funnel and I want to trust that my propensity data, my analytics of what my sales staff, operation staff does, and my ability to kind of wrap around these digital tools up funnel is going to carry that lead through to conversion.
Right.
What are you seeing when you talk to lenders or you help them understand what they should be looking at there and whether or not we can trust, kind of to the conversation Jake and I are having in the chat, can we trust that it's worth it? Can we trust that once I do all these things up front, I'm not going to lose that lead, purchase or refi, because I've done enough up front and I'm hooked in. What's your take on that for how you see lenders interacting with that kind of data, conversion or propensity?
Yeah, so I would say a couple of things. I'm going to go in reverse with it. So for one, this industry hates to test things and they hate to be the first to test it because it's expensive, it's time consuming, and probably to Jake's point that I haven't read in the chat or your point, one of you, it's just something where people don't want to go first, take the risk, and then like what happens if it's not, you don't see the ROI the way that you wanted to. And the ROI, yes, we obviously want to balance, cost and profitability, but there's also just the general like, do I see the benefit in ROI that would translate to cost and profit in other ways first, meaning,
Right.
my resources are not bogged down by tasks that they don't need to be bogged down by, and I can leverage them for higher value activity. I am actually seeing, a consumer for become a lifetime relationship, and I'm getting their refi business because I stayed in touch with them, after purchase, et cetera.
Yep.
And so I think we're still, unfortunately, early days. Some lenders are starting to test that and do well with it, and I think see the ROI, but I don't know of anyone that has enough data to fully bulletproof say, yes, you should do it, and here's the recipe for how. And I don't know that anyone's really done a great job of like, depending on if you're IMB, bank, credit union, small, mid, large size, like what does that application look like for you? And how do you, do that? And right, it's one thing. Oh my God, fire alarm. Excuse me. You can continue without me.
Fire alarm. Oh no. Yeah. So I'll pick up where you left off, Sasha, and say this, which is I do think it does matter what you've structured your incentives to look like and what you've structured your system to look like. You can't just pivot on a dime when the world changes. You do have to think about those things. That said, I think we are uh, doing a bad job of just replacing one piece at a time digitally and not thinking about it holistically. And sometimes now, next, later, we get too generic in our advice, and so it's hard to drill down. So what I mean here is when you just do one at a time patchwork conversion to digital, it will take you longer and you are likely not to have any ROI because you've only really made one of your handoffs or one of your lily pads digital. And as a result of hopping through that process, you're still as slow as your longest link in that chain. So when Jake says things are moving to parallel processing, things are moving away from linear, one of the benefits is you can give your customers a much better view of progress. You can keep them going through the process. Thereby, you're actually saving all of the money that you meant to by taking things completely out of somebody's list instead of just digitizing them into someone's list. When I say list, by the way, I mean a task list, checklist, hot list, whatever you guys call it inside your lender. That's what it is. I think as far as giving discounts for using tools, to Alan's question, I'd like to use Rocket's most recent profitability announcement from their last earnings call. Those discounts are not yet being forced into the consumer's pocket by competition. Rocket is able to capture that discount for automation and put it in their pocket for now. because they haven't needed to lower the cost and give the
I was like,
consumer
I
a
didn't want to say that
discount.
online, but you can say it.
I'll say it. I'm
Because I
happy to.
know that there
I
are lenders that are like they're leveraging that ROI for themselves. I get it. I get it. But
eventually, I think the market will get constrained to a degree that Rocket will be forced to pass that back through to the LE and to the customer to keep them in the funnel and to keep them coming to Rocket. But for now, and I'm happy to say it because I love it when Rocket calls me, and I love it when I get to talk about it. But like that to me is what we're seeing. Could you, Alan? You absolutely could. Digital closing alone, what Sasha and I are referring to, what we worked on a couple of years ago at two separate platforms, you could find significant savings in just closing digitally with your hedge, delivery, and risk that you could pass through to a rate sheet. The only reason it wasn't yet getting passed through to the rate sheet at the big digital lenders was simply because most of them could offer it to their branch managers or MLOs as like a you pick off the menu style. That's their culture. Their culture is to tell branch managers and MLOs, you get to control everything. You get to pick. So they didn't really pass through the advantage yet because they were still in that like, you're an independent MLO, you get to pick whatever you want. That became financially totally unreasonable in the last like 3 years. So now it's like, I do have to pass through some incentives to get them to do what I want because it's become too unwieldy to have
yep.
3,500 loan officers all doing whatever they want. But going forward, we will see discounts for digital. I think we're going to see it. I'm really bullish on just giving it to consumers as a claim your discount right now to keep going, right? Just put it in the journey. But that would require a lot more digital tools than most lenders have.
Yeah, I think, there's some permeations here. One, change in administration made it such that we're not going to see a push from a regulatory standpoint to demand closing costs to come down,
Right.
at least in my humble opinion. So now it's on the lender to decide. And to your point, one would hope that they'd find ways over time to balance the equation, right? Save the consumer some dollars, but also save yourself some dollars. With closing technology specifically, it's hard because the real savings that is like significant is with eNote, not hybrid. And eNote
Mm-hmm.
adoption is just still so low for a multitude of reasons, right? So that might be one that over time we see more savings come to play, but we need more people doing eNotes and we need more participants in the ecosystem accepting eNotes in order to see that, $300-400 per loan savings, which is significant. You talk about, so for me now, like shifting into the verification space, we're able to look at, are you consuming data more often than you need to be? Are you running reports, pulling reports when you shouldn't be? And if you are, how do we configure your system to tell you based on your data and insights, don't run a report right now, wait, hold, only order when you need to. And as a result, we're able to pull out in one instance, a very large, I'm not even allowed to say it yet, a very large amount of savings per month, like significant millions of dollars, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that is another area to look for, is like, where are you using data and paying for data that you don't need to be, right? Because again, adoption with eNote could take time, but right now you can go in and look at your system and either do the analysis yourself or partner with a technology company that provides that analysis that can help you figure out where you are using data, consuming data that you should not be, and you're just costing yourself money for no reason.
That's a perfect summary to end on because I think you're exactly right. eNotes, the people who are leveraging eNotes in a dramatic way aren't telling you or talking about it on any podcast anywhere or on any panel anywhere because it is so dramatically saving them time and money. They don't want you to know. I think that's my belief. It's up to the vendor platforms because the lenders who use it well, those top five adopters, according to Ginny's really the only one you can truly get the data from. Fannie and Freddie aren't necessarily putting out, I think, the securitization level detail on eNotes. Maybe they are, and I'm just wrong, but both categories, those lenders are saving so much money on hedging, warehouse, and delivery costs and risk that they're not telling anyone about. And I believe the same thing is going to happen up funnel. To your point, I think it's going to become somebody is going to just put the offer in front of the consumer in such a way that they're not going to tell you that they have a digital conversion funnel that blows everyone else out of the water. And it's going to be until market share shows it. And then it's going to be like, oh, that's what they're doing. But I think we've seen it enough in other parts of the transaction that it's moving left, it's moving out to the funnel.
Totally. And
Yeah.
on the closing side, even though I don't work in that side of technology anymore, I will say if you're a best X shop and you're out there thinking, I don't get how that works for me, go talk to one of the leading companies in the space and they'll show you the math behind how it does. It takes some configuration. You got to sit down and look at the data, figure out how to set it up and how to make sure. And I think, eventually, whether OptiFunder or otherwise, hopefully we'll see some tools that'll help manage through Best X a little bit better. So that you in real time can see, hey, if I go right or if I go left, like this is my ability to earn or save. But it's definitely possible, regardless if you're not locking in decisions ahead of time.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think if you look at it holistically, you can build that backwards or forwards. You literally can decide which way you want to build it, but you've got to be doing that. Well, thank you,
I think,
Sasha. Yeah.
sorry, what Jake's
No,
saying
please.
is, process, like you can't, layering technology on broken process is a waste of your time and money. So if you're going to implement technology, whether it's enhance what you already have that you've been leaving on the shelf or go buy new, fix your internal process first. Because otherwise you're just putting mess on top of mess, and what you put in is what you're going to get out. So I'm reading that and I'm like, you're preaching to the choir, right?
Yep.
But in addition to that, there are opportunities to optimize that I think lenders are leaving money on the table right now. And look, we're not going to have an upcycle swing this year the way that we all want, right? We're not going to go back to 2020, 2021, where all of a sudden the phones, or I mean, emails or texts or whatever, I don't know, I always say phones are ringing off the hook, right? It's not going to be that kind of year, although we all want it. So take the time now, right? You have the ability, go look at where you have opportunities to optimize, because if you do that, it's a slow, and I'm saying it right as you're writing it, it's a slow down to speed up, right? And also we got to think about the people impact, right? I get, maybe as a loan officer, you don't think about this as much, but corporate executives should 100% be thinking about laying off people sucks. We don't want to do that if we don't have to. Scale your technology so that if you have to scale back, you can scale back on the tech instead of the people. And I'm a technology provider saying that because I believe in the human factor. Like, I don't want you to let go of your people. Nobody wants to be out of a job. It's terrible. I've had it happen 3 times in my life and it's awful. So be
Yeah.
smarter about your decisions now so that you don't have to make as many of those hard decisions down the road.
Yes. Couldn't agree more. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. I got that. That's a Navy SEALs thing, but it applies to all process, whether you're working urgently, whether you're not, whether there are lives on the line or not. The idea is like slow is smooth and smooth is fast. And that's actually the best way to accomplish the adoption we talk about here, but this comes up a lot for a reason. If you watch Now Next Later every week, thank you, first of all. And second of all, you hear us say this because it is so fundamental to actually winning in this space. And if you don't feel like you're winning, you've probably just sped up your bad product. You've probably just sped up your frustration instead of actually moving.
Plug for one of our future episodes. In a couple weeks, we're going to have Christy Suckamat from University Federal Credit Union. I'm terrible.
Yep. UFC.
And she, on Housing Wire on stage, talked about how they went from 1,200 production per loan down to 8,800 through tech stack evaluation and reducing waste. So we'll have her come on and share some of that data, but call your friends in the industry. I get you can't, share all trade secrets, but there are certain things you can share with one another, and you can find out, like, how did you have the time, the resources to do the tech stack evaluation? And then how did you and where did you find the savings, and how and where did you implement them? And she said on stage, like, pick the biggest pain point that you have and start there, fix it, and then go to the next and go to the next.
Yep.
So I don't want to steal her thunder. She'll share the whole story, but there are lenders out there that are doing it and doing it effectively. And so, hopefully when she comes on, that'll be a good resource for this group, this audience, but also call your friends and ask them. Put your brains together. 2 brains are better than one.
Yeah, thank you. Let's tease it. So I believe next week we'll have John Herring from Wilco. John, many people may know him as the compliance maven expert from Encompass for many years, now at Wilco. So we'll talk to him about that. And then March 17th, Christy from University Federal Credit Union. So the next 2 weeks, we'll be talking LOS, some compliance, and then production costs, and actually how do you move? If you are linear, how do you do it? If you are parallel processing, how do you do it? We want real savings, and we'll talk about that on St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Sasha. Great to see you as always. I hope this was valuable, everyone. Please continue to follow Now Next Later and share it. We'll put this on YouTube and talk to you next week.
Thanks, Jer. See you guys.
See you, Sasha. Bye, everyone.